wanted to use
Really sure.
In hopes to generate something of a conversational attitude. And I thought, if I might, I would begin with Ms. Nance. Penny, how do you respond to those who say that the problems of American families and marriage are primarily due to economic inequalities? Don't social problems, like those that the Senator was just talking about, don't they best correlate with income?
In fact, I enjoyed the entire speech. I thought he did a really eloquent job of expressing some thoughts on a range of issues, including marriage and abortion, that many of us feel and have been thinking about. But on this issue, he did a great job of talking about something that I discuss with college girls. We have Young Women for America chapters all over this country. And even when I'm speaking to them, or whether it's my child, I have, by the way, my 17-year-old's here with us today, and I tell her, there's really no secret to success. It's actually very simple. And it's the sequencing to success that the Senator mentioned today, and that is, just to reiterate, that is to get an education, high school or better. And he didn't talk a lot about this, but this is important. Don't abuse drugs or alcohol. It means get married before you get pregnant, and try to stay married as best you can, and then work hard. And even if you're born into a family that doesn't have wealth or privilege, like I was, or the way Senator Rubio was, you have a great opportunity in our country because we live in an exceptional nation, one that presents opportunity to people all over this country. Yes, there's barriers to success. Yes, there's barriers and even disincentives to marriage in this country that we need to address. But if you simply can do what he's laid out, and we, by the way, as people outside of government, leaders in our communities, leaders in the faith community, have got to be giving a consistent message, a moral message to people, and reminding them to counter what Hollywood is telling our young people. Fall in love and get married, and try to stay married. Have your children together and have a beautiful love affair. It sounds like Hollywood and it sounds like a fairy tale, but it's attainable. I've just seen it. My in-laws just were married for 50 years. My parents have been married more than 50 years. And that's why we've been able to go, my family, in 2 generations, to abject poverty to relative affluence. So, thank you.
I wonder if I could have a follow-up to that. But many conservatives contend that removing government involvement is the solution for social ills, including a solution perhaps for the difficulties facing marriage. But don't you think there's a role for government to play in strengthening families? Don't you think that there's a role for government to play in strengthening marriage?
The farther away we get from individuals and families, the less productive it is. And he talked about how HHS programs haven't worked very well. And that's under Republicans and Democrats. So if we're going to be helpful, yes, absolutely, there is a role for government. It's better on the local and state level than it is on the federal level. And it should be for a time period. It shouldn't be for an ongoing way of life. It should be a hand up, not a hand out. And that is what people want. I come, again, from a family that did not come from privilege, and I grew up in Appalachia. People don't want to be dependent on the federal government. They would like to have a job. They would like to have the dignity of work, enables them to raise their children. Let's do that. And us as people who are community leaders, let's come alongside. Churches should be offering free daycare, and they do, by the way, or very low-cost daycare, so that mom that you described has more money to feed them. We need to offer educational opportunities, and shame on that businessman or woman who would not allow that single mother to go take her child to the football game or to the dental appointment. Let's do a better job as a community. We have a responsibility, and that's what we say to our members, where much is given, much is required. Yes, there's a role for government, but guess what? It's mostly on us.
Thank you. I was struck listening to the senator's talk with and this is an academic allusion, I apologize, but I was struck by the resonance between his discussion of the decaying values and his analysis and the analysis of academic analysts like Robert Putnam and others who attribute many of contemporary social ills to things like the decline of community and the breakdown of social capital. Am I right to see the parallel between what the senator is talking about and these academic analyses?
Is it working now? Yes. Okay. I went to shout. First of all, I'm not from around here, so I apologize. I should start. So in order to cover what I'm about to say, I'll say two things. One is that I love America. Second time I've lived in America. I love America so much that I keep moving here. I'm going to live here forever. I married an American. My kids have American passports. I was born on the 4th of July. I also agreed with a huge amount of what the senator said. I appreciated his tone as much as his content as well. I thought his tone around some of the controversial issues was really welcome. I don't agree with him on 2 or 3 quite big issues, which I hope we'll get the chance to talk about, including same-sex marriage. But I do think he set it out very, very well and very thoughtfully. So I'm grateful. And I also agree with him about the problems of economic mobility, the American dream, and that you can only build a strong America with strong Americans, and the work I'm doing on character would certainly support all that. So I agree with a lot of that. I think one of the problems with saying that it is down to us, to neighbours, communities, etc., to civic society rather than government, is that it's obviously true, and most of us engage in those sorts of activities ourselves in our own lives. But the problem is that America is dividing very strongly on geographical and community lines as well. And so if we are volunteering, if I may be a great neighbour volunteering at my kid's school, I may be a scout leader, I've done all of these things, but I'm doing all of that in my own neighbourhood. My own neighbourhood is actually very affluent. And so the kids that I'm helping are not the ones who most need my help. And so the more divided America becomes, like by community, by social capital, the less actually that civic energy is going to do the job for us, because that civic energy is almost definitionally local energy, and to the extent that localities are now very, very strongly fragmented economically. So whereas racial segregation has gone down a bit, but it has gone down, economic segregation in the US has gone up quite sharply. So we are now more likely to live in homogenous communities particularly on socioeconomic status, that are like us. So crudely, affluent people living with affluent people, very poor people living with very poor people, right? So my civic energy isn't going to help the very poor people unless you can find a way of having civic action which crosses those borders, which is not localist at all. And so actually I think that poses quite a sharp challenge to the senator's hopes that civic society can do much of this work for us.
It seems to me that brings up an interesting follow-up, since you've written so much about the role of character in addressing social ills. How do I say this? Don't those same economic inequalities that you think stand in the way of the senator's hope for communities and local associations to resolve this, wouldn't they stand in the same way against your own hopes of using character as a way of approaching these issues?
Yes, so where I strongly agree, so the senator had a lovely line that you can only build a strong America with strong Americans. I thought it was a great line because I think it's certainly true that unless people have certain character strengths, particularly the ability to plan for the future, to defer gratification, to stick with a task, to have what's now known as grit or resilience and so on, those things are very predictive of your ability to follow the success sequence that he talked about. So the ability to finish your education, succeed at marriage, wait until you're in a committed relationship before having children, those aren't really so much about your smarts. They're not really about IQ. They're not school smarts. They're not book smarts. They're really about character strengths. They're really about the ability to sort of be planful and thoughtful and committed to the long term. The danger is that one of the main ways that those character strengths are generated, as the senator said, is through family, and in particular through parents. Parents are the kind of character generators supreme. Of course, schools and communities can help. And so to the extent that the economic gap and the geography gap and the education gap and the marriage gap is also becoming a parenting gap, which it very clearly is, then that bodes very ill for the future, because it means that the very children who most need to cultivate these strengths and these skills, who therefore most need committed parents are the ones who are actually least likely right now to get them. So I think there's a real danger for intergenerational mobility from those problems, and that the way into this is through committed parenting. Parenting, it seems to me, is really the magic ingredient here. He said it himself. He's privileged because he had committed, strong, stable parents who basically invested very strongly in him. And by the sounds of it, his kids are going to be okay, right? He might have missed the kindergarten thing, but you get the strong sense he's probably doing a pretty good job as a dad. His kids know he loves them, he's there for them, and he's working at it, right? And those are the key attributes. So his kids will probably be fine. So my view is that marriage is the result of committed parenting. So let's get at it through parenting rather than through marriage.